When Hearts Find Their Way, A Love Beyond Time. Chapter 1. The Memory of a Distant Summer. There are some childhood memories that never fade, no matter how many seasons pass. For Linda, it was the summer when she was 10. Her family had moved to a small coastal town for a short stay. It was the kind of sleepy, sun-drenched place where kids ran barefoot, the scent of salt and wildflowers lingered in the air, and the days felt endless. It was also the place where she met James. James was the boy with unruly dark hair, freckles across his nose, and an infectious smile that could light up the gloomiest day. He lived next door to the summer house Linda's family had rented, and he quickly became her best friend. They spent their days building sand castles, climbing trees, and chasing waves as the sun dipped into the horizon. But what Linda remembered most vividly was how James made her feel, as if she belonged. On her last day in the town, Linda and James sat on the edge of the pier, their feet dangling over the water. "Will you come back next summer?" James had asked, his voice hopeful. Linda shook her head. "We're moving somewhere else." James was quiet for a moment, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, smooth seashell. "Keep this," he said. "It's lucky, and maybe one day we'll see each other again." Linda took the seashell and held it close to her heart. They didn't say goodbye with words. Instead, James took her hand and squeezed it gently, as if trying to imprint the memory of that touch forever. That was the last time Linda saw James. Chapter 2. A Life Carved by Time. The years slipped by in the way years often do, quietly and relentlessly. Linda grew up, studied hard, and carved out a life for herself. Now, at 29, she was a successful architect living in London. She often found herself engrossed in her work, designing structures that told stories of purpose and permanence. Yet, despite her achievements, Linda sometimes felt like something was missing. She couldn't quite explain what, just an emptiness she had grown used to carrying. The little seashell still sat on her nightstand. One late autumn evening, Linda received an unexpected call from her boss. "Linda, you've been selected to lead our latest international project. It's in Florence. You leave next week." Florence, did I? Albumstatter. The city of art, romance, and whispers of stories, older than time itself. The thought of spending several months there was thrilling. Maybe a change of scenery was just what she needed. Chapter 3. The Streets of Florence. Florence greeted Linda with open arms. The golden hues of the city, the cobbled streets, the Renaissance architecture, the warm glow of street lamps in the evening, made her feel like she had stepped into a painting. It was here, in this timeless city, that Linda felt her heart slowly begin to awaken. On weekends, she wandered the streets, discovering hidden cafes, art galleries, and markets brimming with life. But one Saturday afternoon, something extraordinary happened. Linda was exploring a small antique bookstore, tucked away on a quiet street. She reached for a book on a high shelf, and as she did, another hand brushed against hers. Startled, she looked up, and there he was. James. James. His hair was shorter now, the freckles a little faded, but the smile, that same radiant smile, was unmistakable. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. Linda's heart skipped a beat as memories of that distant summer flooded her mind. "Linda?" James said, his voice laced with disbelief and wonder. Linda's lips trembled as she whispered, "James." Chapter 4. The Reunion. They walked together to a small cafe nearby. The conversation flowed effortlessly, as if no time had passed at all. Linda learned that James had become a travel photographer. He had spent years exploring the world, capturing its beauty through his lens. Yet, like her, he had always felt that something was missing. "I never forgot you," James admitted softly, his eyes searching hers. "Every time I saw the ocean, I thought of that summer." Linda smiled, reaching into her bag. She pulled out the seashell he had given her all those years ago. "I never forgot either," she said. James stared at the shell, his expression a mix of surprise and emotion. You kept it." "I did," Linda replied. "It was my lucky charm." The warmth in James's gaze was undeniable. For the first time in years, Linda felt the emptiness inside her begin to fade. Chapter 5. A Love That Never Left. Over the next few months, Linda and James spent every moment they could together. They explored Florence hand in hand, sharing stories of their lives and dreams. The bond they had as children had blossomed into something deeper, something that felt like it had been written in the stars. One evening, as they stood on the Ponte Vecchio bridge, watching the Arno River shimmer beneath the moonlight, James turned to Linda and said, "I've spent my life chasing beauty, but nothing has ever been as beautiful as this moment." Linda's heart swelled as tears filled her eyes. "It's like we were meant to find each other again," she whispered. James cupped her face gently, his thumb brushing away a tear. "We were," he said. Then, leaning in, he kissed her, a kiss that was tender, timeless, and filled with the promise of forever. Chapter 6. Full Circle. When Linda's project in Florence came to an end, James asked her to stay. "We lost so many years already," he said. "Let's not waste any more." Linda smiled, her heart finally complete. She spent so long searching for something she couldn't name, only to realize that it had been waiting for her all along, in the form of a boy from her childhood who had grown into the love of her life. They settled in a small villa outside the city, surrounded by olive trees and wildflowers. And every evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Linda and James would sit together, watching the world turn golden and knowing that some loves, no matter how much time passes, are meant to find their way home. Epilogue. Years later, Linda placed the little seashell on a shelf in their home. It sat next to a framed photograph of her and James on the Ponte Vecchio, smiling like they had the world at their feet. Somewhere, a breeze carried the scent of salt and wildflowers, whispering secrets of love stories that never end.
The Love Spell in Madrid. Madrid was vibrant, alive with a spirit that felt both ancient and new. Its streets, a mixture of cobblestone and modern pathways, reflected the blend of history and innovation that defined the city. For Olivia, a young painter from London, Madrid was more than just a destination. It was an escape, a place where she hoped to find inspiration for her next gallery exhibition. But what she found instead was something far more profound. Olivia had always believed in the magic of art, in the way a single brushstroke could evoke deep emotions, but she had never believed in real magic. Until the day she walked into the small, unassuming shop tucked away in the heart of Madrid's old town. The shop was dimly lit, its shelves lined with books and trinkets that looked as though they belonged in a fairy tale. Olivia had wandered inside on a whim, intrigued by the sign in the window that read, "Amor Verdadero," true love spells. She chuckled at the absurdity of it, not one to believe in spells or destiny. But something about the place felt different, almost as if it was calling to her. An old woman with kind, wrinkled eyes greeted her from behind the counter. "Looking for something special, dear?" she asked in Spanish, her voice soft and comforting. Olivia hesitated before answering in her broken Spanish. "Just looking. Thank you." The woman's eyes twinkled. "You're not from here, are you?" "No, I'm from London," Olivia replied, switching to English, hoping the woman understood. "I see," the woman said with a nod, switching to flawless English herself. "You're not here by chance, you know. This city, it has a way of drawing people in, especially those in search of something more. What is it that you're looking for, my dear?" Olivia smiled politely, though she felt a twinge of unease. "Inspiration, I suppose. I'm an artist." The old woman nodded knowingly, as though she could see far more than Olivia was telling. She reached beneath the counter and pulled out a small, dusty book. The cover was worn, and the pages looked ancient, filled with handwritten notes in a language Olivia couldn't decipher. "This," the woman said, placing the book gently in front of Olivia, "is not for just anyone. It contains a spell, a love spell, but not the kind you're thinking of. This spell doesn't create love. It reveals it. It opens the heart. Olivia raised an eyebrow, intrigued despite herself. And how exactly does that work? The woman smiled. That's for you to discover. But be careful, love is a powerful thing. It can lift you higher than you've ever imagined, but it can also break you if you're not ready for it. Olivia left the shop with the book in hand, still uncertain about whether she believed any of it. But something about the woman's words had stirred something inside her. That evening, back in her small apartment overlooking the city, she opened the book and began to read. The spell was simple, almost disappointingly so. It required no special ingredients, no elaborate rituals. All it asked was for her to think of the person she loved most, light a single candle, and speak the words written on the page. Olivia thought of her ex-boyfriend, James. Their relationship had ended amicably enough, but it had always felt like something was missing. She couldn't help but wonder if this spell would reveal that he had been the one all along, the one she was meant to be with. She lit the candle and spoke the words, feeling a little foolish as she did. But as the last word left her lips, something shifted in the air. The room grew warmer, the candle flickering as if caught in a breeze that wasn't there. For a moment, nothing happened. Olivia sat in the dim light, feeling silly for even trying such a thing. But then, as she was about to blow out the candle, she felt it, a presence, not physical but emotional, like someone else's heart was beating in time with hers. It wasn't James. The realization hit her like a wave. She closed her eyes, trying to focus, and in that moment, an image appeared in her mind. Dark hair, warm brown eyes, a laugh that was both infectious and soothing. His name was Raphael. She hadn't thought of Raphael in years. They had met during her first visit to Madrid, a whirlwind trip with her university art class. He had been a tour guide, taking them through the Prado Museum, and they had spent hours talking about art, life, and everything in between. There had been a connection, undeniable and intense, but she had left Madrid without giving it much thought. After all, they lived in different countries, and life had moved on. But now, sitting in her apartment with the candle flickering before her, Olivia couldn't shake the feeling that Raphael had never truly left her heart. She had buried the memory, convinced herself that it was nothing more than a fleeting attraction, but the spell had revealed the truth. She had been in love with him all along. The next few days were a blur. Olivia couldn't focus on her painting, couldn't think of anything but Raphael. She found herself wandering the streets of Madrid, half hoping she would run into him, though she knew the chances were slim. After all, it had been years. One evening, as she strolled through Retiro Park, lost in thought, she heard a familiar voice behind her. Olivia? She turned, her heart skipping a beat. There, standing just a few feet away, was Raphael. For a moment, neither of them spoke. They simply stared at each other, the weight of years and unspoken feelings hanging in the air between them. Finally, Raphael broke the silence. "I can't believe it's really you," he said, his voice soft, almost disbelieving. Olivia smiled, though her heart was racing. "I could say the same. What are you doing here?" "I live here now," he said with a shrug. "I moved back a few years ago. What about you? Are you here for work?" "I'm here for inspiration," she said, the words feeling more meaningful now than they had when she first arrived. And maybe for something more. They spent the evening walking through the park, talking as though no time had passed. The connection they had felt all those years ago was still there, stronger than ever. Olivia couldn't help but wonder if the spell had truly worked, if it had somehow drawn them back together. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the city, Raphael took her hand. "I've thought about you, you know," he said quietly. "More than I should have. I always wondered what would have happened if we had stayed in touch." Olivia felt her heart swell with emotion. "I've thought about you too," she admitted. "I didn't realize it until now, but I think I've been searching for you all this time." Raphael smiled, his eyes filled with the same warmth she remembered from all those years ago. Maybe we were always meant to find each other again. That night, as they walked through the streets of Madrid hand in hand, Olivia felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. The love she had been searching for, the connection she had been missing, had been there all along, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. And as they stood together beneath the stars, the city of Madrid alive with the sounds of life around them, Olivia realized that sometimes love doesn't need a spell to work its magic. Sometimes it's already there, waiting to be discovered, like a masterpiece hidden beneath layers of paint, just waiting for the right person to bring it to life. In that moment, with Raphael by her side, Olivia knew that she had found what she had been searching for. Not just inspiration, but love. The kind of love that transcends time, distance, and even magic. And she knew, deep in her heart, that this was only the beginning of their story. The end.